If assumptions are being made about growth rates in emerging countries for the next 7 to 10 years, perhaps it's time to pause and take stock of some developments that could derail this growth. What keeps us awake at night, or what should keep us awake at night? I'm going to pose that question to Kanwal Sibal, former Foreign Secretary of India. India, this region, this part of the world, what should keep us awake at night?
Well, I would list many issues.
But primary, two or three.
Well, actually there's more than two or three, but let me just mention them very quickly. One, of course, is the whole issue of terrorism and the linkages terrorism has with Islamic fundamentalism or religious extremism, or however you define it. And in our context, the fact that Pakistan is also a nuclear state, and therefore you have three concerns intersecting in Pakistan: fundamentalism, terrorism, and nuclear capability. Afghanistan, post-2014 scenario, and especially if the Taliban claw their way back to power with the connivance of the West, which simply wants to get out of Afghanistan in whatever order they can. Iran, the possibility of a threat of nuclear action, of a military action against Iran, and the consequences of that on our interests in the Gulf, where we have 6 million expatriates, but $40 billion of remittances, and 80% of our energy comes from there. And then there is the Shia-Sunni conflict. We want to isolate our Muslim community from Shia-Sunni conflict because we can't afford that, sectarian conflict of that kind. Then the Arab Spring and the tendencies that are developing there in terms of replacement of secular authoritarian regimes by Islamist authoritarian regimes, and the consequences of that on this entire territory between Morocco and our borders with Pakistan, because all these forces are interlinked, the ideology and everything else, and with modern means of communication, they can decide where to attack and where not to attack, where to put pressure. These are some of the things, plus of course the rise of China and the situation in the South China Sea, relations between China and Japan, threat of conflict there, to what extent we can isolate ourselves from this, because as you know, this whole Indo-Pacific concept has got developed. The United States thinks India is a pivot of the rebalancing towards Asia. Can we escape, therefore, pressures from the United States to participate in some way to deal with this conflict, plus our ongoing problems with China on the border, Dalai Lama, Tibet, and with the withdrawal of US from the Gulf region, from this part of the world, and general decline in defense budgets, and the impression that the United States in retreat means that China could have more space in which to become more self-assertive. And if the time is right and they can choose their time, will they add to pressures that they already are building on India on the strategic side, and how we would cope with this? These are some of the issues which should keep us awake at night.
It's a long list,
yes.
Which means that you're saying essentially, and I'm going to summarize very broadly, but you're saying that there's a list long enough that could very easily derail some of the growth assumptions that we're making. Is that indeed what you're saying?
It'll add to the problem because our growth assumptions are already being compromised.
Under pressure, they're being tested.
They're tested because of our own mistakes and our own lack of governance, and our fact that we've not been able to restart the reform process, and this corruption, and all the issues of balance of payments, current account deficit, urbanization of our population, jobs, the skill development, developing a manufacturing base, boosting our agriculture.
I get the sense that you're not very optimistic as we stand today.
No, I'm not, because at the center of all this, and this also has a relationship with our foreign policy, at the center of all this is governance. Now, I don't mean authoritarian governance, I just simply mean efficient and
transparent governance.
Transparent government and firm governance, because laws, if laws are there, laws have to be firmly applied. Must not work outside the realm of the law, but within the realm of law, act firmly and with confidence and with conviction and with sense of purpose.
I'm going to put a question to you and, see if you agree with it or not. Alluding to what you said earlier about China and its potential for, potentially China's growing might in this region. But if the US is seen to be in retreat, if the US is cutting back on its budgets, if the European Union could be following suit and actively on that front, defense budgets taking a hit, then what is wrong for if China and India are actually ramping up their defense budgets and consolidating their military might, because the world has always seen a couple of key players with a powerful military presence?
Well, firstly, we are not ramping up our defense budgets. In fact, our latest defense budget
has been cut.
And we are spending only 1.7% of our GDP on defense. Even Britain is spending 2.5%. And Britain has no threats to cope with. And we have threats all around us. So we're not ramping up. China has increased its defense budget to 110 billion declaredly, because their actual budget probably is double. Their budget and their defense capabilities are intended to deter the United States of America. But in the process of building that up, they deter us, because in any case, whatever they need against the United States can be used against us. So that's not an issue. But with regard to India and China operating in the Indian Ocean and providing security to Gulf oil production and things like that, I have a very different view from what you might have heard, which is that India is at the head of the Indian Ocean. If you look at the map, we dominate the Indian Ocean. The Gulf is very close to us. Actually, it's a part of our extended neighborhood. If India had not been divided, we would have effectively, virtually a common border with the Gulf countries. We have a blue water navy. We should develop this blue water navy more, and we should dominate the region. And if the United States is withdrawing, we can step into that and dominate. China is far away. It's a Pacific country. It's not an Indian Ocean country. It would be like saying that if tomorrow India started showing its presence and strength and in the South China Sea, we have no
that it would be accepted.
We have no business to be there in any case, because our core interests are not involved.
But here our core interests are.
Here our core interests are involved, and therefore I see no scope for any but nominal cooperation with China as between two friendly countries. But to give them strategic space in our neighborhood, invite their navy to come in, then why are we worried about Hambantota and Chittagong and Mauritius and Seychelles and Gwadar and this and that? We should be very clear. We don't want any large-scale Chinese presence, especially naval, in this region. But yes, in terms of the commercial shipping and everything else,
that should go on friendly terms.
That should go on. In any case, that is in accordance with international law.
We'll leave that as your final word. Thank you very much for your time here.
My pleasure.